Hi guys, it's Jacob from StringBuzz here, stringbuzzworld.org being the music journalism site. Links are in the description down below. And I thought I'd shave my little wispy beard off for this double feature. Yes, it is the first double feature which I've ever done on the YouTube channel, as well as the site as well. But what better time than now? Neck Deep have just dropped 2 new tracks in quick succession, 2 new music videos as well, so I thought I'd give them a little review each. The next song review will be coming up straight after this one, so you've got that to enjoy as well. But this review is of the latest Neck Deep track, and that's Where Do We Go When We Go. So I'm going to refer to the original article as I usually do for these videos, so I hope you enjoy. Now, funnily enough, I have a long and close and intimate history with Neck Deep's music, which has taken me up all sorts of strange avenues in the past. When they started up, I really couldn't stand them at all, and I just couldn't understand the hype around them either. But now they are this huge entity in pop punk music, international wise. They were the biggest emerging British rock band, and I mean flat out rock overall, not just pop punk, around 5 years ago or so. But now they are just a huge entity in the music industry. Then I joined a pop punk band myself, and they immediately jumped up into my top 3 favourite bands, at least favourite pop punk bands anyway. The pop punk stage was probably my happiest stage in my musical career as well. I really enjoyed doing that. It was really fun live, and we took a ton of inspiration from Neck Deep and their performances and what they are like as a group. However, I got a couple sort of press passes a little while ago for the site to review one of their concerts. It was in the O2 in Birmingham, to review a gig about a year and a half ago or so, and it was my least favourite gig of that year. It's actually in my top 5 least favourite gigs I've ever been to. I hated it. I thought they were terrible actually, and it was the year that they won Best Live Act. So yeah, I don't know whether I'm just smoking something strange despite not smoking, or I just disagree with the majority here, and especially since I saw Bowling for Soup the next week, which in the same venue as well, and they totally eclipsed them as well. But should we see what I thought of this brand new track? Let's get back onto the point now. Right, I can kind of understand the changes that were made here and the developments that they actually made from their last album, their last fantastic album, Life's Not Out to Get You, but there are also some terrible regressions in here as well, which made the track seem immensely cheesy to me overall. Firstly, I'm not actually a big fan of the squeaky clean vocals supplied by Ben this time around, and I've always rated him as a singer, despite many people calling him out for not really being naturally gifted at singing. But as his technique has actually gotten better, his unique quality and punky edge has almost depleted entirely. He sounds like the most generic pop rock singer ever. If you'd taken Neck Deep's name off of this, I wouldn't have noticed it was him at all, which is crazy because Ben Barlow once upon a time has had one of the most unique voices in pop punk music. The drum track is great though, and I actually really rate Danny Abassi as being one of the best pop punk drummers around at the moment. He always makes really exciting drum tracks for me. The guitars one moment are redundant and forgettable, completely redundant to the mix overall, and then the next they are sort of fairly exciting and fairly fun. The song as a whole though, for me, just to put a sort of ending statement on it, is ruined by a terrible, rubbish, one of the worst production cycles I've heard this year because it's too much tampering. On the subject of production, it's just way too clean really, and it gives me horrible flashbacks to my first listen of the Blink-182 album California, which if you've been following the site or the YouTube channel for a while, yeah, I did like that album funnily enough, and it was largely down to a shocking production cycle. The vocals here are pitch corrected, gated to heck, noise gated that is. Every single line is a new take, which I know has been done in the past, but it's never been as obvious as it was on this track, and it just came across as way too poppy for me and way too clean for a punk group, even a pop punk group. It's way too weighted on the pop side. The guitars are limp and way too thin as well, despite the overdrive actually being fairly decent and fairly similar to what we had on Life's Not Out to Get You. I've never really been a fan of the Neck Deep guitar tones. I've made this very obvious in the past, but they have always really worked for me, and I've just found them a little too weak this time around. The clean tones though are fairly decent, and it added a lot since it's actually fairly rare that we get to hear a clean tone on an electric guitar when it comes to Neck Deep's music. They've never really gone down that sort of road before, and it's nice to hear on their first outing that they've pretty much got the clean tones exactly right for what they need. The drum track sounds perfect though, I will say that, and for me the kick in particular fills the low ground really well, covering the bass by adding a pulsating, wholesome beat to the low end of this track. But whilst we actually mentioning the low end, the bass might as well not have been there, because it was almost silent, and it was probably the worst bass tone I've heard all year by a rock/pop punk group, and I'm not exaggerating right now, it seriously is. So all in all, it's one of their worst production cycles, and I'm shocked that it's this bad. When it comes to the musicality of this track, it's not like they did a Linkin Park or an All Time Low, where they completely change up their style and isolate their audience by just removing this idea of progress and instead devolving into regular pop music, you know, not actually developing as artists, but rather phoning it in, which people seem to muddy the lines every now and then, and many groups around at the moment have been muddying the lines. But this track can hardly be called pop punk anyway, since there is no real punkiness there. So we have to remove that label, we have to put that well out of the way, because that's what has to be done. And then when you compare it to other pop tracks or even pop rock tracks, it's really weak in comparison to the competition. It's unfortunate that it's come out in May, the best month I've ever had as a music reviewer for the last year and a half, regardless of whether I've been part of String Buzz, Music Season or Gig Soup. So yeah, it doesn't actually mount much of a challenge against its competition. The sample is really outdated and cringe-inducing. The chorus hook again only emphasizes how cringy this whole the tears sort of stuff. Yeah, it was just so corny, really. The guitars for the most part are wasted for me, and there aren't any dual melodies at all, which we usually hear in Neck Deep's music, and I just found it all really disappointing. The group are best at making fun, bouncy tracks with a cheeky surface and a sincere backbone behind them, but this track is rushed, the form is weak because there's no bridge, or this clapping bridge is just, oh god, it was, by that point it just felt like somebody was putting a wet fish across my face. The harmonies again are just face turning, really. I'm running out of insulting words, which is not a nice thing to really say. And I think if you take the name away from this track, as I've said, you wouldn't even recognize the group. For me though, the worst aspect has to be the lyrics, and that honestly hurts me even more to state. Before, Neck Deep did write some fairly stereotypical tracks with themes that we've heard 1,000 times at this point, but they had some heart to it and some genuine experience to them, as if they were telling a very personal story. This, however, is wince and cringe inducing, and it's full of some of the corniest and stolen lines that we've heard before. So all in all, just listen to the new Trash Boat album or the Newfound Glory album or something like that instead of this track in particular, or better yet, just maybe check out the likes of These Minds or these other sort of emerging British pop punk groups, because they have the sound which Neck Deep made popular 5 years ago, and they're doing it better than this group seem to be doing it right now. So I can't say this album is shaping up too well for me in particular anyway, so I gave it a G rating of 3.5 out of 10, which is well below average. How disappointing. So if you like this video, then please leave a like, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you around next time. Bye bye.